It's what's known in the news business as burying the lead. Beijing issues a list, proposed amendments to China's constitution, 21 of them. Tucked away at number 14, the end of term limits for the president, a momentous change that would allow Xi Jinping to remain at the helm of the planet's most populous country, a growing superpower. Social media was already blowing up as the first newscast on the state-owned CCTV went to air. The coverage of all those constitutional amendments was dense, painstakingly dull, with no real explanations given. It took them 18 minutes to get to the real story, Amendment number 14, which also got the surface treatment.
中华人民共和国主席、副主席每届任期同全国人民代表大会每届任期相同。
Thereafter, the state-controlled news media in China had a sales job on their hands.
We saw on Monday, the day after the announcement of the proposal, that People's Daily published a long piece basically saying, that Chinese people really welcome the abolishment of the term limits. And it quoted a whole bunch of ordinary Chinese people basically praising it and saying this was a great decision. And it seemed like almost, an answer to all of the criticism.
Official media, like the People's Daily, have gone bankrupt in terms of trust. People will not pay attention to what they say anymore. That is not to say that the party paper has absolutely no influence over the people. The influence is limited, and they have no choice but to follow the script.
What criticism there was of the announcement was confined to social media. Almost 750 million Chinese are online. Platforms such as Twitter and Facebook are banned, but the country's micro-blogging equivalent, Sina Weibo, has more users, 340 million, the vast majority of them in China, than Twitter does around the world. Weibo has long been a principal platform for political dissent, with users often hiding behind fake names. Since last year, Beijing has made it mandatory for Weibo users to register with their real names. Dissidents can still find ways, though, to get their messages out, cryptically, sometimes taking advantage of the flexibility of Chinese languages and their written characters, sometimes using fictional figures to make political points about real people in power.
Winnie the Pooh is kind of a stand-in for Xi Jinping. I guess it's because Xi Jinping is a little bit short and pudgy. We saw memes of Winnie the Pooh being crowned king, Winnie the Pooh holding a honey pot with the message, if you find something you love, you better stick with it. So kind of funny, but they're also subversive, and they were censored pretty quickly. But it's important to note that Chinese internet users are not a stand-in for the general population, because people who use social media tend to be more educated, they tend to be urban and young, so that is not really representative of the population at large.
Chinese society has become quite diversified. Different people have different opinions. It's a sign of a sophisticated society. With Weibo and WeChat being so advanced these days, you hear many different voices. There's nothing wrong with that. However, in traditional Chinese culture, there is a need for a guiding voice, a leading will. So the official press has to convey the significance behind the amendments to the Constitution.
The Chinese media space has a recent history of opening up slightly, only to close again, based on events. Prior to the Tiananmen Square protests of 1989, journalists had enjoyed a period of relative freedom, which ended in the aftermath of the crackdown. Restrictions were loosened again prior to the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, then tightened again once the foreign media contingent had gone home. 5 years later, Xi Jinping took power, having marketed himself as an anti-corruption champion. By the time he toured China's top 3 state-owned news outlets in 2016, the anti-graft campaign was in full swing, and the media outlets reporting on that story played a central part in it. Xi did not mince words. The president told journalists working at CCTV, among others, that their ultimate loyalty must be to the Communist Party. As he put it, the party and the media were part of the same family.
Having grown up in the era of Mao, Xi Jinping accepted the education of that time and believes that the propaganda of that era was useful. He has returned to the propaganda model of the Cultural Revolution, with its emphasis on strong leadership and cult of personality. However, he wants to disassociate himself from the negative side of the Cultural Revolution and just make use of the power of the cult of personality.
Under the current regime, there is a much greater control over the press than we've seen previously. The censorship has become much more severe. Journalists who don't toe the party line now receive harsher treatment. When they do actually report, they only put out good news and reduce the so-called negative energy, or whatever is critical. Control of the press is at an unprecedented level.
Another kind of overarching trend that's happened during Xi's administration is his drive to circumvent the bureaucracy by putting his trusted loyalists in places of power, in large part through this anti-corruption campaign. And state media has not been an exception to that. There was a big anti-corruption purge at CCTV, which is the state broadcaster, and one of the country's most famous television anchors, Ri Chenggang, basically disappeared one day. It was really a clear message to the network that they had really better behave.
In most countries where governments take an authoritarian approach to the media, there are clear red lines established, that which cannot be said about a ruler or a policy. China takes that approach a step further, recommending terminology for the media to use. In November of last year, the Communist Party issued so-called guidance to the news media, advising them to focus on the fact that General Secretary Xi Jinping is a leader with the support of the whole party, is beloved and esteemed by the people, and is fully worthy and deserving.
That is the message they are trying to send to the people. Does it have any impact? For Chinese nationalists or people who are not as clued into the news, they will see it positively, that the leader and the people are united. But I don't think it has an effect on people who are more politically aware.
In my opinion, the most important thing is not how the government commands the media, how it plans its messaging, but rather if there is some room for the media to express different opinions. Do they have any freedom of speech? Is it possible that the party can control even more media? If so, then with this kind of propaganda, no matter how unsophisticated it is easy to brainwash the crowd.